Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into one of history's absolute most terrifying biological marvels. It's a creature that has literally dictated the rise and fall of entire human populations, and yet you can barely even see it with the naked eye. Yep, we're talking about the flea. So how exactly did a wingless insect, literally the size of a pinhead, change the course of human history? It's a pretty wild mystery, right? We usually think of apex predators as these massive, fearsome beasts. But this microscopic little organism managed to bring down vast empires, decimate populations, and completely alter human demographics on a global scale. To figure out how they pulled this off, we've got to go back. Way, way back. These guys didn't just appear overnight. Their origin actually traces all the way back to the supercontinent of Gondwana during the Middle Jurassic period. As we move up the timeline into the early Cretaceous, we start seeing these massive transitional giants like Saurolophus. And then finally, rolling into the Paleogene period, we see a massive diversification of modern fleas as they adapted to hang out with mammals. Now, if you're a scientist, you'd classify them under the order name Siphonophora. But here's the crazy part. Genetic evidence actually reveals that fleas are just a highly specialized, wingless offshoot of scorpion flies. Their ancestors were likely these winged predators or scavengers that eventually just traded in their wings for a cushy life of parasitism. And wow, there is a dramatic physical contrast between past and present. Today, we've got our modern fleas. They're tiny, maybe 1.5 to 3.3 millimeters long, and they're incredibly specialized jumpers. But their ancestors? Those Mesozoic stem fleas were giant, terrifying, wingless insects. They couldn't jump at all, and they had these incredibly long siphonate mouthparts designed for a very specific, much larger type of host. Take Pseudopulax, for example. This was a primitive, absolute giant of a Mesozoic stem flea. Just imagine a pest so heavy-duty that it needed a long, reinforced proboscis, basically a biological power drill, just to pierce the thick, tough hides of feathered dinosaurs and pterosaurs. Yeah, these prehistoric parasites were the ultimate heavy-duty ancestors of the modern flea. And the best part is, we actually have the fossil evidence to back all this up. Discovered in the early Cretaceous Yixian Formation over in China, we have Saurolophus exquisitus. This specific fossil is a huge deal because it acts as a crucial transitional species. It literally bridges the gap between those massive dinosaur-biting giants and the tiny modern fleas we know today. You're literally seeing evolution in action here. Notice the much smaller body size compared to that giant Pseudoplex. It's got shorter, piercing-sucking mouthparts, really compact antennae, and these highly elongated legs covered in stiff bristles. So it's ditching the heavy dinosaur drilling gear and becoming a much leaner, more specialized machine. Section 1. Biological weaponry. The anatomy of a modern flea. So as the dinosaurs died out and mammals took over the scene during the Paleogene period, the flea had to adapt quickly to survive on these new, furry hosts. And man, did they evolve a highly specialized biological toolkit. They shrank down to a mere 1.5 to 3.3 millimeters. Their bodies became laterally compressed, which just means they're flattened side to side, so they can seamlessly slip through dense mammalian fur. They evolved these hard sclerite plates to withstand incredible pressure, so if a host tries to scratch or crush them, they're perfectly fine. Add in some backward-directed spines so they can't be brushed off easily, plus a piercing-sucking proboscis for feeding on blood, and you've got an absolute evolutionary masterpiece. But honestly, their most famous adaptation all comes down to one single number, 110. A modern flea can leap 110 times its own body length horizontally. To put that into perspective for us, if you had that kind of ability, you could jump 200 meters in a single bound. It is hands down one of the most incredible feats of acrobatics in the entire animal kingdom. So how on earth do they pull that off? Well, direct muscle power simply isn't fast enough. Instead, they rely on something called resilin. It's this super elastic protein pad. Fleas use it to store massive amounts of muscle energy, kind of like pulling back the string of a really tight bow, which sets them up for a truly explosive jump. Here's the play-by-play of how that physical act of jumping actually works. First, a muscle contracts, which deforms that resilient pad we just talked about. Second, a special catch mechanism kicks in, holding the joint closed and storing all that kinetic energy. Third, the catch mechanism is triggered, releasing all that built-up torque in a fraction of a second. And finally, this rapid release completely bypasses the knees, launching the flea directly from its lower leg segments, the tibiae and tarsi. It's basically a microscopic catapult. Section 2, Vectors of Epidemics, How Fleas Shaped Human History. All right, we've seen their microscopic physics, so let's zoom out and look at their devastating macro-level impact. Meet the primary villain in this historical true crime story, Xenophila chiapis, better known as the Oriental rat flea. It was formally identified by entomologist Charles Rothschild over in Sudan back in 1903. This specific flea is uniquely adapted to thrive on rodents, especially rats, which, as we know, love to live in super close proximity to humans. The Oriental rat flea is incredibly dangerous because of the specific pathogens it carries around. Most notably, it acts as a primary vector for Yersinia pestis, that's the bacterium responsible for the bubonic plague, and Rickettsia typhi, which causes murine typhus. Now, the mechanics of how this transmission actually happens are, frankly, pretty gruesome, but it's absolutely crucial to understand. The flea feeds on an infected rodent and ingests those pathogens. Later, when that rodent dies and the flea jumps over to a human host, its dual-function mouthparts go to work. While it's sucking up fresh blood, it's simultaneously squirting pathogen-laden saliva directly into the bite wound. Basically, it's injecting the human with the disease right on the spot. To really see the real-world devastation of this, let's transport ourselves to 19th century Varna. This was a highly strategic port city right on the Black Sea, heavily utilized during the Crimean War between 1853 and 1856. Because it was such a major hub for international troop movements and supplies, it unfortunately became a terrifying epicenter for disease. During the war, Varna was just hammered by converging epidemics. Troops arriving on Allied ships brought cholera with them, and at the exact same time, the plague was introduced and started spreading like wildfire. How? Through infected fleas hiding in military clothing that was being distributed from army depots. That constant movement of people and goods created the absolute perfect storm for flea-borne transmission. The human cost here was just staggering. Over 5,000 French soldiers and 859 British soldiers were lost to cholera alone in Varna. Keep in mind, this whole situation was severely exacerbated by dreadful sanitary conditions. We're talking very limited clean water, poor hygiene, and troops crowded tightly into tents. In environments exactly like this, fleas just absolutely thrive, turning individual infections into massive, uncontrollable outbreaks that can easily decimate entire armies. Tragically, the deadly efficiency of the flea wasn't just left in the 19th century. In the 20th century, their potential as vectors was horrifyingly harnessed as biological weapons. During World War II, the Japanese army intentionally dropped fleas infested with Yersinia pestis in China to spread the plague. It's a really sobering reminder of their ongoing threat as biological vectors. So let's quickly summarize the epic, albeit pretty dark, legacy of the flea. They evolved from predatory scorpion flies, transitioning from these giant dinosaur biters into highly specialized mammalian parasites. They developed an incredibly sophisticated biological toolkit, armed with heavy-duty armor and resilient powered jumps. And ultimately, this biological perfection made them one of the most efficient disease vectors on the planet, literally capable of altering the entire course of human history. Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. Fleas have survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. They've successfully adapted to countless mammalian hosts, and they've thrived in the cramped, unsanitary cities of human history. As climate change continues to reshape global ecosystems, altering temperatures and habitats around the world, where will these highly adaptable evolutionary survivors strike next? It's definitely something we need to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.